Split Fiction. Split Fiction is the new game from Hazelight Studios, known for It Takes Two and A Way Out. Of course, it is another co-op game, solely co-op game that you can play online or locally, and you play as two writers, Zoe and Mio.
You did wet your lips.
You're two. No, I opened my mouth because I'm looking at two writers.
This could be us.
This could be us. Two writers, Zoe and Mio. Zoe writes fantasy novels and Mio writes sci-fi novels, and they can't understand either genre. They're like, fantasy, yuck. Oh, science fiction, good toy. But they basically are unpublished and looking for a bit of success, and they both get approached by Raider Publishing House, which is this big, high-tech publishing house. They get invited to show off their book and basically get put in this machine that puts them into their own book.
Okay.
So one thing leads to another. Mio's not so sure of the entire situation. You know, as a sci-fi writer, it makes sense that seeing people floating in a big orb, she's like, something's probably wrong here. She tries to get out, instead falls into Zoe's orb. And that's where Split Fiction comes into effect, where they are getting constantly thrown back and forth between each other's stories.
Right.
And so you're basically going through these different stories, you know, via platforming. Of course, it is a platforming adventure in order to break out of these orb chains. I've been playing with my boyfriend, Oliver. He's been playing as Mio, and I've been playing as Zoe.
Remind me again, Zoe's sci-fi?
Zoe is fantasy,
Sorry,
and
got it wrong.
Mio
Okay.
is sci-fi.
Okay.
And, you know, in classic It Takes Two fashion, each different chapter of the game sees you utilizing different powers and weapons and such. So currently, as you can see here, we're in Mio's story, which it's very Tron. It's very, very Tron. There are parts of it which look very Blade Runner-y.
Is she a shit writer who's just very derivative?
It's funny because she thinks that very much of Zoe. But you're going through this her story, which involves, you know, a big bad that you have to defeat, and in very Hazelight fashion, the dialogue like shifts between being genuinely quite funny and engaging to a little cheesy at times.
Sure.
But it works.
Okay.
It works really, really well. And the sci-fi level the sci-fi levels that we've played so far have just been absolutely fantastic. Like, just so high speed, high velocity. I've been using the gravity whip, which is both a weapon as well as a platforming tool. And then when you're done with that big first chapter, you get thrown into one of Zoe's stories, of course, because, you know, you got to go from one to the other. And this is the fantasy levels. And in these fantasy levels, your power is you both have two different creatures that you can shapeshift into.
You're animals.
Yeah, pretty much.
Amazing.
So I have
Derivative.
I have a fairy form as well as like this tree spirit form, and then Oliver had this giant like ape as well as like a little axolotl type creature. And I loved this section because so much of it is like quickly shifting between your forms in order to like platform and like jump around. And I mean, Hazelight just does co-op right. They do co-op so right because they give each person a unique power or unique ability that they can both kind of get as much out of as one another.
Yeah. There's I found with
It Takes Two.
It Takes Two. How'd that slip? That you were always doing something super cool and also jealous of what the other person got to do. It was like, oh, but you get to shoot the nails into the wall, and I'm swinging across them with my.
But I personally have not felt that feeling in this game because, like, sometimes I'd see Oliver.
That's a good feeling. I'm saying both sides are fucking awesome.
Oh, both sides are amazing. Sometimes in the sci-fi levels, I'd see Oliver slashing people with this like cool gravity sword, and I'm like, shit, that's awesome. But then I could literally just like pick a guy up and throw him at another guy with my whip.
Can I ask, the way this game is structured, a big thing with It Takes Two was just how they really did that Nintendo thing in that game of like, or that Mario thing of like, they had a good idea and they just moved straight on. You'd never see that idea again. Is there a similar thing here, or is this a little bit, and as a positive, is this a little bit more like you have your powers for your set worlds and you return to them a bit more like a traditional sort of adventure game?
No,
or
so
is it just constantly rug pulling you and giving you
the
new
big
stuff?
thing in this is that you're with every world of theirs, like
Yep.
every story of theirs that you're jumping into, and these are like quite lengthy chapters.
Yeah.
Every story that you're jumping into is, you know, a story of theirs pretty much from start to finish. So once you find the glitch and get out of there, that's that story.
So you wouldn't
Sick.
see Ape Man and Groot powers
We'll never
again?
see Ape Man again.
Nah.
Yeah, cool. Okay,
But
yeah.
also a really neat thing in this game, which is funnily enough optional, you find mini stories within the main chapters, and they're always stories done by the other writer. So for example, Josh, if you scrub to maybe halfway through, here we go. So this is a Zoe story that we found in a Mio chapter, and it's kind of like Dune-esque riding sandworms through this very Prince of Persia Sands of Time world. It feels fantastic. It's fun as hell. And you find maybe like 2 or 3 of these in a chapter that take you to just different worlds that still have either a fantasy or sci-fi link. I found that maybe it's just a case of you know, sci-fi having a lot to do with each other, but the sci-fi ones were fairly similar, but you always had different things to do in the sci-fi levels.
You finished the game?
It's hard to say where I'm up to.
Yeah.
But you
I'm
played a
not-
decent chunk.
I've played a very decent chunk.
Okay.
We every time we've sat down to play this game, we've looked at the clock, and we've maybe just been there for like 4 hours just doing
Yeah,
shit.
wow.
It's so easy to get lost playing this game. It is fucking
Well,
fantastic.
Hayslide famously, they just don't have any downtime in their game. From memory, with It Takes Two, I had a lot of trouble. And again, it's that a big part of that might come from also having another person often in the room with you who is just urging you or like you're just both enjoying it. So it's like you need both of you to run out of pep to say we're going to stop now and put the controller down, which is probably a positive. For,
And to that point of like, you're constantly getting something new to play with. There's no point to put it down because I'll just see how this works, and then suddenly you're halfway through that chapter.
It's like, I'm stopping being super into sci-fi right now. And it's like, oh, don't worry, in about 10 minutes we'll probably get thrown into a fantasy setting.
Can I ask a question, which is, so It Takes Two had kind of really interesting writing to me. It was kind of weird,
Yeah.
but also, and kind of ham-fisted, but actually really heartwarming and unique and different. It felt like I was playing a video. Not many video games felt like It Takes Two, or but does that same energy carry on to this
So
one?
you're so right, and said the It Takes Two story did feel very ham-fisted, but in such like an endearing way.
Yeah, man.
I
a little
feel
bit of like a slightly foreign, like a foreign film translated across, but not in a language barrier, just in kind of the way I would have expected characters to typically react and write.
well, yeah.
Same kind of vibe.
I think they.
surprising tone.
Oh my god, incredibly surprising tone. It's like, Mo, we're getting a divorce. It's like, why are you saying it like
We're
that?
murdering an elephant.
Yeah.
now.
Oh,
It's like,
don't
it's like, what the
remind
fuck?
me.
I love
I
it.
replayed It Takes Two with Oliver, and I had to do that again. And I'm like, I don't want to look at the screen when we're doing this. It makes me severely uncomfortable. But I feel like they might have learned from It Takes Two, which kind of bums me out because that game
That was Game of the Year
I
for
love
me.
how cheesy it was. But the story in this definitely feels a lot more slow burn because these are
Okay.
2 complete strangers, and one very clearly is more confident than the other. This is another bonus level that we found inside the fantasy level where it's this like survivor-like game show where you have to throw this bomb between you two, and the platforming gets more and more difficult, and it was a fucking
metaphor for
joy.
who could get
It was
funding.
also a fucking pain.
Oh, really? Sorry, you were saying
no, okay.
they're strangers, so they
Yeah, so they're
develop and
strangers. So like they're getting to know each other. One is very clearly not as interested in getting to know the other.
Yeah, okay.
Just wants to get out, but like they're slowly becoming friends over the course of the game, and it's really sweet and it feels quite real.
Is it more mature writing?
Yes.
'Cause-
And
To the point of the parents were most of the driving dialogue in It Takes Two, and it felt like it was being played a little bit like a young adult
Screwball comedy.
yeah,
style,
which obviously comedy
Yeah.
can kind of skew.
because
younger as
like
well.
you've got the big bad in like each level, but you've ultimately also got the bigger bad of the publishing company. It just seems like a little something
Okay.
sus is going on.
And does that get returned to? While
Yes.
You're, okay.
Yes.
There is
like
a sort of
every time you
reminder
finish a
of-
chapter, I shouldn't call it this. It's like a big. It's
Say
like a
it.
big pussy in the sky
Okay.
that you like see everybody through.
sold.
Outside of the orb.
Oh right, so the rift is opened up.
The
and
rift's
you're-
opening,
Yeah.
and like the second it opened, I was just like to Oliver, "That's pussy," because I knew it to be true. And so, but like you're taken back to like the real world every so often,
Right.
But something that I'm
Birth, some might
finding
say.
the Earth even
Birthed.
Birth
Birth of the Earth.
one day we will be birthed. I'm hoping
distract
that's
you,
like the
focus up.
final.
Yep, keep getting to the point.
Yep. No, sorry. Yeah. So, but yeah, this game it's
bit
so
more
hard
mature.
to describe how perfect it is. It's
Oh,
a li-
good.
Shit.
It's fucking incredible.
Okay.
Like it is setting itself up to be my favorite game of this year, and it's only February.
I feel like it's wild that the Hazelight guys and like they've totally. I'm not going to say hit their stride, but they've totally found their market in what is it when multiplayer, but you both do something
Couch
slightly
co-op?
different? What's the word I'm thinking of?
like asymmetrical.
Asymmetrical,
split
thank you.
screen co-op.
It's got like semi-asymmetrical experiences that
Cooperation,
you
yeah.
therefore want to share and replay and share physically with someone in the space or online. Even asymmetrical character motivations that you've got they feel differently about each other. It's strange that this hasn't taken off more as a genre. I think we
Yeah,
even
more
talked about it
people.
when It Takes Two won Game of the Year. It's like, why haven't more developers tried this? And look, maybe there are some smaller games that have, but I just find it interesting that mainstream-wise, these guys, It Takes Two, A Way Out, and this. are like,
but Brothers, they remember
Brothers
they started
A
with
Tale
Brothers:
of
A
Two
Tale of Two
Sons.
Sons,
Yes.
and that game blew people away.
Yeah.
And that was a much, it was an ambitious story and a smaller concept, like technically. And then A Way Out was like a jump into the full-on 3D, like directed narrative gameplay that was just a bit dry and uninteresting. So it's like the things that they learned from those two games to bring into It Takes Two and make a game of the year on their
That's the
third
thing.
go. It's like,
People love an
They're locked
incredible
in now.
story. They love a beautiful experience in gaming. People also love to play games together.
Yeah.
And Hazelight, time and time again, does that perfect meeting of the two where they make a fantastic game, gameplay-wise, with a really in-depth story that you stick around for. But on top of that, you get to experience it with someone else.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like watching your favorite movie with a friend,
Can
and
I-
you're both liking it.
Can
you
I,
know?
in typical form, throw a small cat amongst the pigeons? And you do not have to, like, I'm not trying to err you onto sort of anything negative in this, but from just appearances on how this plays out, do you think there's something lost? And again, I won't feel this when I play it, in the idea of using story, falling into your own story as a bit of a bit of an easy cheat to go, oh, we can move you between worlds and different gameplay styles. Because I loved It Takes Two's. It was strange. There was no really explanation as to why the parents became the toys, but there was definitely a journey that, like, you traveled through the house in miniature toy form, and it was quite like everything felt structured in a kind of reality of fantasy. There's a little part of me that sees this as like, oh, and then we fell through the floor into a different world and that kind of thing. I'm throwing this out there so you can.
I will say my cutting style for this clip very much makes it look like you're falling back and forth. It's quite linear.
I just meant as a narrative device to say you are literally, there's a machine that pulls you into books, and that's an excuse to go anywhere and write any kind of setting that you want for a video game.
Totally.
I'm asking, that doesn't come off ever feeling kind of a little bit, not lazy, but just,
Not really,
that's just a cheat sheet for it.
Because
Okay.
I think I think.
I know I'm
Where
talking to you. You're not
the
gonna say
argument
anything
where you
negative
could say
about
that
it.
it's potentially uncreative, I think it harkens to the creativity of artists, because the whole thing is that you're delving into these artists' different stories that they've come up with over the course of time. There's one level which is hands down at this point in time my favorite fucking level. I almost don't want to talk about it because I don't want to spoil it, but I fucking will anyway.
No. I genuinely don't
I've
want
got
you
clips
to.
for it.
I don't know, I've seen
I wanna
too much
play
of this already.
And then
Does it get meta? Are they like talking shit, heaping shit on each other's worlds as they're inside
Oh,
the
absolutely.
world?
The whole time. The
Yeah,
whole
okay,
time.
That could be
There's
cool,
one.
man.
Okay, then I won't spoil it, but I will say
you have to grab
there's
Chekhov's
one-
gun to actually fire your way out of the level.
There's one level that is the accumulation of not the accumulate. There's one level that is a story written by Zoe when she was a child, and it was the first story that she ever wrote.
Okay, so
And
they
it's
open up
so
story-
far. It's so different from the fantasy worlds that she comes up with now, where like it almost feels like a time travel story within this like jumping into your own fictional world story, because you're not just going into these like different worlds, you're going into different worlds that have a direct link to these characters' frames of mind at that certain period
okay,
of time,
cool. No, look,
which
you've
is
won-
so cool.
You've won me over because, yeah, like if it is more to do with the mentality of that character and what they were like, their writing style and what that reflects about their life, then that's a really clever way to do it, as opposed to falling into book and next page, kind of like June, next page, kind of like Tron. But if that's a comment on, this is a bit where I really got influenced by something and I wrote this, then that's actually clever narrative.
I will say gameplay wise, there's clearly lots of influences from all over the shop, but it's done
But then
so well. it's done
As
so
you said,
well.
they can meta make the author comment on that while you're in the
Yeah,
level.
that's
And
right.
yeah, cool.
No
it's,
book?
it's fantastic.